Special thanks to our podcast sponsors, Brigitte and Bashar Kalai, Hallie Vanderheider, and Sippy and AJ Karana.
At Crime Stoppers of Houston, we believe in safety for all, and to achieve that, it's necessary to have balanced conversations where all are represented. Here's where we come together to do just that. Welcome to The Balanced Voice.
Seven seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is all it takes for a predator to decide if you will be their next victim. In an effort to educate young people on the importance of situational awareness and self-defense, Crime Stoppers hosted our first ever college safety summit over the summer. We knew Bre Lasley would be the perfect keynote speaker for the event. Bre survived every young person's biggest fear when a stranger crawled into her window in the middle of the night and attempted to murder her and her little sister. Bre fought with every ounce of her being to survive, and since her attempted murder, she has made it her life's mission to educate young people on the importance of defending yourself holistically because she believes that every single person is worth defending. When we welcomed Bre to our College Safety Summit, we could not help but record a podcast episode with her, and we're so glad we did. In this episode of The Balanced Voice, Bre opens up about many aspects of her story that she has never shared before. This is an episode we believe all adults should hear, but we do want to note that this episode may be upsetting and not appropriate for a younger audience. To learn about some of the self-defense tools and techniques that Bre personally recommends, head to our show notes after the episode at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. Without further ado, here's your host, Rania Mankarios.
Hi, everybody. Rania Mankarios with Crime Stoppers, and I am thrilled today. We are doing a modern leadership series, a virtual college safety summit, and we have such a special guest with us today, Bre Lasley. Bre, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you, to learn more from you, and to hopefully help those listening.
Bre, you have such an incredible story, and you've given us permission to dive really deep into the details and walk our listeners through. I want to start by saying it's so important to have you for so many reasons. I'm going to share Houston's story quickly. I shared it with you before we started filming, but when I took over Crime Stoppers, I met with a woman who lives in a very, very prominent part of our city, one of the wealthiest parts of our city, not that it matters. And she was just jogging in the middle of the day, not that it matters. Mm-hmm. And she was thrown into the trunk of a vehicle. She was abducted and she fought her way out. They got her again. They threw her back into the vehicle. She fought her way out. And she came and met with me after, and she said, many months after, and she said, the ordeal was beyond what I can articulate. But what's plaguing me is the fact that my daughter could have been walking down that street in which she have known how to fight, which she's not strong enough, which she have the mental ability to figure out how to save her life. And she said, please do what you can to reach young women across Houston, across the state, and across this country. And that has never left me. We've heard a lot of stories, but that story's never left me because not just as a woman, but as a mom, we can relate. We can hear these things and understand that they happen. And you lived through something extremely traumatic and you almost lost your life back in September 2015. And we want to talk to you all about it and the champion you've become for victims, for women everywhere. So again, thank you so much for being with us. It means the world to us.
Well, thank you. And hats off to that fighter. I'm so proud that she fought back twice. It's very impressive.
So let's start in the beginning. Okay. Tell us, where did you grow up? What was your lifestyle like growing up as a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in Syracuse, Utah, which is about 30 minutes north of Salt Lake City. And I grew up in a family of 5 children. I'm the second oldest. Our family was very close. We're still very close. We lived close to our grandparents and our cousins. We spent a lot of time just playing outside. Most of my childhood is just growing up, playing with my cousins and making memories outside and doing those types of things. I went to high school. I really enjoyed school, pretty average life. And then my senior year, I decided I wanted to postpone college for a while. I was trying to think of any excuse not to go to school. And I signed up in a home ec class to go to China. So I went and lived in China for almost a year after graduating high school. And that experience alone. Now, before I went to China, the furthest I'd gone was like to Disneyland on a family vacation or something.
Oh my God.
And so I had no idea what I was doing. And I also knew when I signed up that if I would have backed out, I would have had to pay like double the price. And so I knew my parents wouldn't say no. I just figured like, I'll have a couple of months. I can figure it out financially. And I went.
How old were you? 7?
It was 2 weeks after I graduated high school. So I had just turned 18 in March, and I left
Okay.
I think the first week of June, maybe. Yeah.
So you're off to China.
So I went off to China. Definitely had all kinds of different eye-opening experiences. I was teaching English, and I just developed. I think I've always loved people. I've always had this thing that I've just wanted. I don't know. I just wanted to be around people and be better because of them and hopefully make them better. Just something I've always loved. So living in China and being able to teach English and give them skills to improve their lives financially or give them different opportunities, it was almost addicting to me. I loved it so much that after I went to China, I went to Ukraine, Egypt, Brazil, and lived abroad for a long time. And our family jokes about it because I grew up as this homebody, scared of everything. I never wanted to leave. I remember being younger and going to a sleepover at my friend's house, and there was like a rainstorm, and I was convinced there was going to be a hurricane in Utah. So I was young. But I just remember being so scared and wanting my mom and dad to come and pick me up, and just I didn't like not being at home. And so forcing myself to get out of my comfort zone taught me a lot of life lessons that I'm still using and practicing to this day, and grateful for that experience to get out of my comfort zone. So I returned home. I was going to school for dental hygiene. I'm in Utah. I'm single. I'm 32, and that is unheard of. Most of Utah gets married at like 18, like right after school. So I've been the odd one out for a long time now. But I really just liked my independency and just doing things on my own and kind of breaking the stigma and just kind of being my own self. So that's kind of how I grew up. I just had a really happy, carefree childhood.
I love that you lived all over the world. My family's from Egypt, so one day we're going to have to offline about what life was like for you there.
Oh, I loved it.
I can only imagine. But talk to me about, safety conversations. Were your parents, was that with 5 kids, was that like a common conversation at dinner? This just happened in the news, or guys, be careful about this. I mean, was social media a big proponent, like when you were growing up? I know for us it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I think when I was in Ukraine, that's when Facebook started. So I remember like signing up for Facebook when I lived in Ukraine. The social media didn't really have an impact, but when I lived in Ukraine, I think I was 19 or 20. Anyway, so social media didn't really have an impact growing up, but I do remember the times where I would feel nervous, where my mom would get really nervous when my dad was out of town. And I remember her setting up like contraptions at our kitchen door or the back door, like moving the couch in front of the door. And, but I don't remember having like sit down conversations of, hey, this is why I'm doing that. And it's not to any fault of hers. It's just, and maybe we did have those and I just don't remember. I'm sure you're familiar with the Elizabeth Smart story. So Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped in Salt Lake, so 30 minutes south. We both grew up in the same religion. We both grew up very similar lives. And I remember following her story. We're the same age, and I followed her story religiously and prayed for her every single night and just wanted a miracle, just like everyone else in the nation. And when she was found, it was, when she was captured, I think that was the first time that I was like, wait, this actually happens. Like, this isn't like a movie thing like Dennis the Menace or something. It happens in real life. And that was probably the most aha safety moment, and which ignited a lot of family discussions about that type of thing.
So bring us to, one, it's, I think, telling that your mom was really cognizant of like family safety and public safety, whether or not she articulated it or not. She may very well have. And again, it's just not something a young woman's thinking about.
Yeah.
You see those things and they stay with you. And I think there's a lot there. Elizabeth Smart's story, shook the nation. We all were just praying for her return, as so many young girls that go missing. Bring us to how you ended up, you and your sister. You come back, you and your sister decide to then go live alone in Salt Lake City?
Yeah. So she had been living in Salt Lake with a friend, and I was living in Salt Lake, just a few streets up from her alone. So she had been there for 2 years. I think I was living in Salt Lake for about a year. And when her contract was up, she moved in with me. And so we lived together in that apartment. Then we moved to a bigger apartment that a home that my friend was renting out. And we lived there for a couple of years. And then one random day he called and said that he sold it to an unexpected buyer and that we had less than a week to get out. Obviously, like, he made a deal with us and made it like financially worth it. And it wasn't like a negative thing. It sucked for us, but it was like, he meant well. Anyway, so we were just desperately searching for a new home, and we found 850 South Roberta Street on a rental listing, and we were able to get it and move in that Monday.
Is it a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood? Was that a good neighborhood?
I really appreciate this question, and it's asked often. And honestly, I didn't think about it moving in. Like, it was never on my radar that something bad would happen where I lived, especially as an adult downtown. It just wasn't on my radar at all. And I think there was other factors into it, as well as the time crunch that we were in to try and find the home. And so when we found it, I can genuinely say I don't even remember looking at the neighbors' homes or anything. Like, I remember pulling up to that house, looking for the bluish gray door and walking in and signing the contract, and that was it.
And, Bre, we asked that for a very specific reason. And it's basically because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And one of our big efforts at Crime Stoppers is, again, we walk this fine line of like, are you paranoid or what is it? And we're not paranoid. We just study safety all day, every day. And have seen case after case in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. And it doesn't matter. And I think it's very telling and very honest that it wasn't even on your radar, because I think most young girls, we're not even thinking about that. But I also think it's a falsity to think that, your neighborhood actually could completely 100% shield you from anything. If somebody has their eye on you and is watching you, they will find a way to get to you if you're not paying attention to what might be going around you. So there's so much that we're going to talk about and unpack, because certainly that 4 seconds is a very big summary to what has gone on. So let's dive in to the night that you are home with your sister. Is it Kayli?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, really quickly, if you don't mind.
Share.
Okay. Well, really quickly, if we go back to that neighborhood, looking it up now, Salt Lake is one of the highest rated, has one of the highest crime rates in the nation. And obviously I would have had no clue then, but 1 in 14 residents have a chance of being a victim of a violent crime, which
14.
Still, I'm unlearning these things, I don't know where I developed these ideas, I guess from innocence of nothing bad happens in Salt Lake. Everything's fine. We're a mile, we're just a few blocks down from the Mormon temple. I think it was the way that I grew up, of everyone I knew I would see at church on Sunday. And of course, no one at church, I hope you can pick up on the sarcasm, no one at church would do anything wrong, but that's genuinely what I believe too. And so it's just been a whole perspective shift. And anyway, just wanted to touch on that.
No, it's so important because hopefully that will encourage other girls, other people that can identify with your statement. And there's so many that would say, well, I've actually never even thought to think about crime rates in my neighborhood ever. And maybe it's time to look it up, wherever you might live. I mean, it's a really valid point. Yeah.
So back to our house, Kayli and I had been living together so we just moved in. We moved in, we were there for I think she stayed there one night, maybe 2 nights. And then her and her boyfriend had planned a little getaway. So they were originally supposed to be gone for 2 nights. When they left, I stayed home and was unpacking. I was working from home, getting ready to launch my English business the following Monday. So I was really just in the zone trying to get things finished. And the only times I would leave my house were just to run certain errands. And I started conversations with the lady who shared the duplex with us. She was in her 70s, an older lady, lonely. Her sister actually lived in the duplex that we moved into, and sadly passed away of cancer, but she had lived there for 25 years. And so I was just trying to be friendly and just talking to her any chance I got. I remember telling her, she was asking what room did I move into and what room did my sister take? And I remember she asked my sister's age and just different questions. And there was one day before my sister left, she was like, don't talk to Sandy. I get a creepy vibe from her. Don't talk to her. I don't want her to know anything about me. And I was like, you are being so rude. And she was like, just don't. And she was like, I don't know what it is. But again, in this culture where I grew up and my own personal experience, it was be kind to everyone. Let's invite them to church or whatever it was. And she shut that down. And anyway, I continued to talk to her from my own and talk to her about myself and what I do. And I never got that feeling. Anyway, so Kayli was gone. Then she randomly decided to come home a night early. So we were at home. I was alone before they came home, obviously. So I was just in my underwear working and just doing my own thing. And when they came home, I went in my room and shut the door and was just going to finish up some emails. And that's when I heard burger. So this is all, there's no way we can prove this, but I think Sandy must have been involved because I heard burger outside my window 15 minutes before Kayli and Blaine came home. And I talked myself out of it. It's like, there's no way. And then I think he saw that they were coming home because he left. He was gone for 15 minutes. And then as soon as Blaine left, a couple minutes after Blaine left, I heard him again. And he said, hey girl, I'm coming in.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when he came in and every girl's worst nightmare became my reality.
When you heard him outside your window the first time and you discounted it, was the voice close enough, or was it like, oh, that's just somebody on the street talking?
It was close enough. I could definitely tell someone was in my backyard, but our duplex was really close to an apartment complex. We had a 7-foot fence around our house, but I just thought, well, maybe somebody's taking their trash out and it's just a dude from the apartment complex. And his voice was muffled. It wasn't I don't know. He was on a lot of drugs. And so it was just he was just mumbling. I don't know what he said. That was another reason I was like, oh, I'm just hearing things. And I had my radio on. But when I shut my radio off, I didn't hear anything. But I think that's when he had already left.
So he now says, I'm coming in. Mm-hmm. And what happens?
I froze. So I'm sure that you're aware of the reactions of danger. And a lot of times the flight and fight are often talked about and freeze is forgotten when freeze is a very common reaction. And that was mine. I was completely frozen. There are no words to explain the terror that I was experiencing. And he came in with his hands like this. He had to slide himself up. My window was at least 8 feet off the ground. He used our neighbor's front porch chair as well as her home broom to open the window. So when I was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, that's when he opened my window all the way. When he came in head first, and I was still frozen. And then and then it dawned on me, he's going to rape me. I've got to get off my bed. And I don't really know what my plan was, but I just needed to be off of my bed. So I ran over to the window, hoping to push him out before he got all the way in. But by the time I got over there, his palms had just hit the carpet, and then his feet flopped in, and he was standing up. So I ran straight into his chest and then looked up and saw how scary he was and knew that I was in for a really, really long night.
And you proceeded, and you're frozen. Did
Yeah.
your sister hear the ruckus of him coming in? I mean,
Yeah, well, she says that she heard something. She wasn't sure what it was. She said that I was making noises she has never heard before. I don't remember making noises. I remember trying, but I just don't even like my vocal cords felt frozen, like I just couldn't get it out. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't even know what to say if I was going to say anything. But he shoved me up against my bedroom door. He told me to shut up and cooperate with him, or he was going downstairs to get my little sister. And when he said little sister and downstairs, that's when I thought, oh my gosh, he's been watching us. How does he know Kayli's younger than me? Anyone who met me and Kayli at the same time, they always assumed, not anymore, sadly, but they always assumed Kayli was older than I am, and she's 5 years younger than me. And so I just knew, like, I didn't know him, but maybe Kayli did, and he was mad at her. I had no idea. But I had my phone in my hand, my keys were on my nightstand, my computer was on my bed, and I offered him, take my phone, take my keys, take my computer. I thought he was an addict. Maybe he was looking for fast money, and if he would take that, then he would leave, and he wanted none of it. And so that was another aha moment of, like, he is not here for anything but me. And I just knew I didn't want Kayli to feel what I was feeling. So my goal was to get him out of my room. We had a huge window in our living room, and I just thought, if I can get him anywhere close to that window, maybe someone will see, break the window, come in and help me. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I reached up to pull him out of my bedroom. When I reached up, I'll never forget, my hands just slid all the way down his sweaty, soft arm, and I felt defenseless. And I didn't know what to do. And that's when I heard screaming, and it was Kayli. So she woke up and she ran up the stairs. Luckily, she thought to bring her phone with her. She ran up the stairs, and she was immediately on his back, clawing his eyes out, screaming at him. And it's really interesting too, as I'm sure that in your experience and education and everything that you've done, you probably are aware that predators will use manipulation as a tool to get isolation and control, the two things that they want most. And every time he talked to me, he used a quiet, nice voice that made me almost feel bad for him, which, just for listeners, just think about that for a moment. Like, now it seems so crazy to me that a man would be in my bedroom, and just because he was using a nice voice, I wanted to help him. And that's how easily I was manipulated. That's how easily and I think it was a character trait of mine, of loving people and wanting to see the good in them and wanting to help them. But there are boundaries that girls need to put in place, that we do not have to be polite, and we do not need to fall for these manipulative creeps. But every time he spoke to Kayli, he was screaming, he was using foul language, he was so intense and way scary, and she didn't fall for any of it. Which is just, I don't say that in a way to victimize myself or re-victimize myself by any means, but it is a learning point that I hope that girls can learn from my experience, and to react like Kayli, to immediately be ready to fight and defend for your life.
I think what you're saying is very powerful, because from the fight or flight or being frozen, I think is such an incredible point, to the fact that women everywhere, we feel bad, we feel guilty, I feel uncomfortable with the guy walking behind me in the parking lot, but I don't want to be rude and tell him to take a step back. Or the guy on the date, I don't like him, but he's asked me to come over 50 times, and I feel like I'm being rude. I mean, you can hear that a million. We hear that being said over and over and over again. So your words are so powerful, because people hear themselves and see themselves in it. So here you are, you and your sister, probably much smaller than he is, are now literally forced I think, to fight for your lives.
Oh, absolutely. Which is another interesting thing that I learned during that. A life-saving technique is, yes, I may have froze, or freeze was my first reaction, but that didn't mean that I had to be frozen the entire time. And so I think sometimes when you're in that situation and once you realize, oh, I'm freezing, you can change, you can go to flight, you can go to fight. But what's interesting is I didn't start physically fighting until he started hitting my sister. And as soon as he started hitting my sister, that's when it was like game on. And it was just full, I don't even know how to explain. We were just raging with anger and just doing whatever we possibly could to get him out of our house. And unfortunately, it didn't end up that way. We were fighting. Kayli's on his back. She's trying to claw his eyes out. I'm on the ground on my knees. I'm holding his shorts. I'm hitting him where I was told to hit boys growing up my entire life. And that was just something I trusted, as if, every show I've ever seen, every boy I've ever been around, if they're hit in the groin, it's down and out, it's dramatic. It's like, okay, you can run away. And that was not happening. He didn't flinch. It was like I was doing nothing. I was punching him there. I was extending my arm, using my elbow, and absolutely nothing was happening. And I felt, again, defenseless. Well, what do I do now? Like, everything I was taught growing up, everything everyone's talking about is, at that moment it's not, but at that moment it just felt like a load of lies. Like, why isn't this working? Why were people telling me that was going to work and it wasn't? And it was really scary. And then I remember thinking, at least he doesn't know we have, or how to get to the basement. At least he doesn't know how to get there. And as soon as I finished that thought, he threw me right in front of the doorway. Somehow Kayli got off of his back. She's standing on the top stair. There were 17 stairs, very steep, narrow stairs leading to the basement. He lifted up his left leg over my right shoulder and like ninja kicked Kayli down the stairs. Kayli is smaller. I'm 5'3". I think she's either 5'4" or 5'3". I don't know, but she's a lot thinner than I am. She's just small. And as an older sister, I was so angry and so scared because I couldn't protect her. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to let her down. I didn't want, just hard to say the very least. So I was just doing everything I could to keep him from going in the basement. When Kayli fell down the stairs, when she was kicked down, her body didn't hit a single stair. The only thing that stopped her was her head going through a wall, which was the only wall in the entire house not made of brick that was put in 2 days before we moved in.
Oh my goodness.
The paint was still wet the day that we moved in. Her head went all the way through it. She got back up, was running up the stairs to help me, and that's when he pushed me down the stairs. And so we both tumbled down the stairs. We hit Kayli. We were at the bottom of the stairs. He's on top of me. I'm laying on my stomach on the bottom at the what is that?
Yeah, the base of the staircase.
The base of the staircase,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And I had my phone with me. And I remember thinking, I'm going to hurry and put it on airplane mode so Siri doesn't work, although she probably won't. So I remember I had my phone with me and I knew I needed the speakers like towards my mouth. So I put it on the highest stair that I could reach. So it was, he couldn't touch it. And I just said, hey Siri, call 911. And she said, I'm sorry, Bre, I don't understand. So I said it again, hey Siri, call 911. Again, same thing, 3 times, same result. So I said, Siri, call Dad. So she's like, calling Dad. And she starts calling my dad. And then I thought, what is he going to do? He's 45 minutes away, but my keypad was unlocked. And so I ended the call. I dialed 911 miraculously. And I waited. I remember specifically waiting until I couldn't hear them. But I remember waiting until the seconds started, until I could see that they picked up and the seconds started counting. And as soon as I saw that, I put my phone on the highest stair I could reach, turned the speakers towards my mouth, and for 1 minute and 23 plus seconds, I screamed, 850 South, Roberta Street. 850 South, Roberta Street. I didn't want to waste any time saying what was happening. I couldn't give them a description. I didn't care about any of that stuff. I knew growing up from childhood, if you're in danger, call 911. And I just relied on that. And I just figured, okay, my call's connected, they hear me, and they're going to send help. My little sister, she was able to call and connect 3 times during our attack. You can hear our desperate pleads in every single one of her phone calls. You can hear our attacker. You can hear him say, stop. You can hear him say, you're hurting me. You can hear him just killing us. You can hear it, and nothing. In fact, in one of the calls, they told my little sister to calm down and to stop screaming. And it was just obviously we didn't know that at the time. So again, we're just relying on these phone calls. We call 911. There was one point where he had us both in headlocks, and he was like, Siri? Who's Siri? And he's looking upstairs as if someone was upstairs. And we're like, what the crap is he talking about? Like, why doesn't he know who Siri is? Well, we found out later that he'd been in prison for 14 years for kidnapping and trying to kill someone else. So for the last 14 years, of course he doesn't know who Siri is. And then while he was still in that headlock, we were still in that headlock, he looked at us both and said, damn, I didn't think you were going to be this strong. And that was another red flag. He's been watching us. This is premeditated. We're in big, big trouble.
We think it's important that people hear that 911 call. We've shared it and we'll continue to share it. We can hear you in it, screaming your address, screaming at him, what do you want? What do you want? We think it's important that people hear it.
I do too. Thank you for sharing it.
So you're fighting for your life and 911 is not coming. Nobody seems to be coming.
Yeah. And it just, it felt like forever. And so at that point too, I couldn't hear Kayli screaming. And it was like, why isn't Kayli screaming? She's been screaming this entire time. And then my attacker figured out what I was doing with my phone. And so he ended my phone call. And when he did that, my phone fell down the stairs. So there's a little bit of light and I could see his hand. I thought they were veins. Later, I found out he has a spider web tattoo on his hand. He was strangling Kayli up against the wall that her head had just gone through from him kicking her down the stairs. He was killing my little sister. And I knew I needed to do something. And I remember running back and just running towards him as hard as I could. And I tackled him into our laundry room. We broke the door. Now I'm on the floor, on the cement floor. He's on top of me and he just starts punching me with both hands. And then I finally hear Kayli. And she's hitting him with something. I can't tell what she's hitting him with. And he's telling me he's going to kill me. He's going to effing kill me. And then she starts saying, no, I'm going to kill you. And then I realized that his right hand was no longer active. I didn't know what he was doing, but I had an opportunity to reach over. I remembered I had pencils. So I was going to reach over now that he was out of the way. I was going to grab a pencil. And my idea was to stab his eyes or something, to use a pencil to defend myself. And when I turned my hand to look, I saw a knife, a dirty, serrated hunting knife, not meant for my body or anyone's body. And I knew exactly what he was going to do with it. And I told Kayli, he has a knife. And I tried to remain, I probably said it just like that. I tried to remain very calm because first of all, I didn't know how else to react. And secondly, I needed Kayli to leave. I needed her to go and get more help. And I knew that if I was freaking out, it would have made that decision for her to make harder. And I told her, we need more help. You need to go. If you don't, we'll die. And she told me, she said, I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving you.
You don't have to share the details.
No, it's okay. I think it's important because I think it proves what really saved us that night, because if Kayli didn't listen, we both would have been brutally murdered. So luckily, in her time of the darkest despair of her life, she chose to leave to find more help. And I don't know, no, actually I do know, no one has ever shown that much love for me. And I learned that night that love saves people. And it's what saved me when I chose to fight for myself. It's what saved Kayli when she did the same, and then when we chose to fight for each other. So she leaves, the last thing that she hears when she's running up the stairs was, "He's stabbing me, he's stabbing me." Now, this moment, in all honesty, I didn't want her to go, because she was the fighter. She was the scary one. She was the one screaming at him and not falling for his manipulation. And I felt so much safer when she was with me. But more than not wanting her to leave, I didn't want her to see her older sister be brutally murdered and then brutally murdered herself. So she leaves, she's running, she's pounding on our neighbor's door. Our neighbor's just sitting on her chair. She doesn't get up, she doesn't move, nothing. And so she's like, forget it, I don't have time to knock on people's doors. So she's running up and down the street, just screaming for help. To my knowledge, there were 8 different calls made from neighbors saying something is terribly wrong. Another call said that they think that someone was on drugs and like running down the street, she's losing it. Somebody else said that someone's screaming bloody murder, to get there quickly, to hurry and help. There's different calls made, and as far as I'm aware, those calls were also not dispatched. So she's running up and down the street. Luckily, by the grace of God and because of Ben Hone's training, Officer Ben Hone from Salt Lake City Police Department was responding to another call several blocks away from us. Originally, we were told that he was off duty, but we have found recently that he was actually responding to another call, not ours. It was actually on the other side of the freeway, miles away. But on his way there, from 3 blocks away, he could hear Kayli screaming as if she was sitting in his front seat. And so he decided to follow her screams for help. And that's exactly what he did. And he pulled up, and Kayli quarterbacked him down into our basement. But in the meantime, my attacker had stabbed me multiple times in the stomach. He stabbed me in the legs. I knew that they were in the leg, and I knew exactly what he was doing. They were prison stabs. They were stabs that were supposed to kill people the fastest. I had been on blood thinners for 2 years up to this because I have a blood clotting disorder. And my blood doctor called 4 weeks before the attack and said, "I don't know why, but you've been on blood thinners long enough. It's scary to be on blood thinners for a long time because of internal bleeding. We haven't had any issues with blood clots, so let's just take you off of them." And I remember thinking, like, that is so stupid. Like, I'm not going to do it. I remember calling my mom and was like, "Oh, I've already lost my spleen and my gallbladder because of blood clots. I don't want to lose any more organs because of them." And it's just scary, like, getting off of that medication. And my mom was like, "I think you should do it." So I gave it like a week, and then I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll get off." So I stopped taking them about 3 weeks before my attack. And if you know anything about blood thinners, it takes 2 weeks for them to get out of your system. The first stab wound, if I were still on them, I would have been dead in 30 seconds from loss of blood. So he stabs me, he stands up, and he says, "I'm going to get your little sister." And then he laughed. Before he left, he was telling me that he's going to kill me, then rape my dead body and do the same to Kayli, as well as a ton of other gross things that he was going to do to my body. But that was the last thing I was going to let him do before I died. There was no way I was going to let him get to my sister. So I pulled him down on the ground. He's sitting, his legs are open. I'm kneeling in between his legs. I'm holding his arms. I can feel his sweat dripping from his shoulders, hitting my hands. And I was so angry at him. And we are like almost nose to nose. I can feel his warm breath on my face. And I'm just telling him, like, just talk to me. Let me help you. He knew nothing about me. And I figured if you knew who I was, maybe you would like me. maybe you would regret doing what you're doing. He didn't know my name. He didn't know anything about me. And he didn't care. He wanted me dead. He was like hunting. I was prey to him. I was nothing to him. And that did a number on my self-esteem. And I remember there was one little moment that I usually don't talk about because I don't want it taken wrong, and especially to victims who might be listening, because no matter what happened to him in his life, and this is something that we can get into later, it will never excuse what he did to me. And same with those listening who are victims of abusive or assault of any kind. There is nothing, there's no answer to justify assault or abuse. But I would be lying if I didn't have this moment where I felt love for him. And don't get me wrong, I want to be very clear, it was not love from me. I did not love him. I don't ever plan on loving him. But I, for a second, could feel that somewhere, someone did. And I don't know who, I can't imagine who would, but I know I just had that little moment, which has been really good for my healing in a way, because I've been able to, sometimes, not all the time, kind of let go, and just somebody else can figure out what to do with him. I can't have him occupy any more of my life that he already has. Anyway, and then I had this voice say, tell him there's $1,000 cash in a Nike box in Kayli's room. So I had an idea, okay, I'm going to lead him to Kayli's room. He's going to have to go through her 2 walk-in closets, go through her Nike boxes, and try and find this cash that I knew she did not have. And then I was going to lock the closet door, lock the bedroom door, and then it would give me enough time to go upstairs. And it was so interesting how it was almost like a PowerPoint in my head. Like I could just see the next step so clearly. And so I was following that action. I listened and acted on that intuition. And then he said, no, I'm going to kill you instead. Picked up a suitcase, hit me in the face with it, hit me in the stomach, fell on the ground. Somehow I ended up with my head on the suitcase. He's on top of me. He puts his left hand on my forehead. He's sitting on me. I can't move. He reaches his knife above his head to come down and stab me, and he couldn't. And he even said, why isn't this working? And I remember thinking, like, I don't know, but don't jinx it, just shut up. And then he was like, well, I'm going to stab you in the head. He said that twice. And then I felt his knuckles graze the left side of my head. And he missed 2 times. There's 2 holes in the suitcase that my head was on. And he gets up. He's frustrated. He's so angry. He's so scary. He's no longer using that soft voice that he was using before. And he holds me up. My feet are dangling. He has his knife at my throat. And I gave up. I was so tired. I didn't know what else to do. I was done. And then I heard, keep fighting. And so I kicked something. It pushed us back into the laundry room. Now he's on the ground. My back is on his chest. He puts me in this wrestling hold. His legs up and over my legs. He squeezes them together, pulls me in closer to him, wraps his left arm around my arms, and then his knife is at my throat. And I can feel his lips on the back of my right ear telling me he couldn't wait to taste white. And he couldn't wait for me to be dead. And for him to go and find Kayli. And I remember saying, you can kill me, just please, please don't kill my sister. And it was right then when he flexed to slit my throat. I moved my head over just a little bit, and I saw 2 shoes coming down the stairs. And I heard the 6 words, Salt Lake City Police, drop the knife. Officer Hone heard Kayli's screams, followed her through the house. She told him not to turn on any lights, to be quiet. She told him that he was stabbing me. She told him that there were 17 stairs, quarterbacked it perfectly. From 8 feet away, 8 to 12 feet away, Officer Hone took 1 shot. After giving my attacker 3 warnings to drop the knife, he took 1 shot. When my attacker told Officer Hone to step back as he's going to sick me, so when he extended his arm, his head came out from behind my head just a little bit. So our cheeks were touching, His nose was an inch, maybe an inch and a half away from my face. And that one shot, Officer Holmes struck Robert Berger in the nose, taking his life and saving mine and my sister's. And I felt Robert die, which I was grateful for. He needed to. There was no other option. He was the one that needed to go. But feeling someone die is an experience that no one deserves. Although that's nothing, I'm so glad he did. And I would take that over the other trauma, obviously, but it's traumatic. It was traumatic lifting up his heavy arm and dropping it on the ground, and then his legs and them flopping. And Ben didn't go into law enforcement. He says this in our trainings all the time. He didn't go into law enforcement hoping to kill someone. I can't speak for him, but I know that it was an easy decision for him, as in he knew he needed to go to save me. But that's never, for people who serve like him, it's never an easy choice. So Ben also says that after he was shot, I don't remember this, but I went up to Ben to hug him, and my body was like squirting out blood. So obviously he didn't want to touch me. And he was also like, what's this girl doing trying to hug me right now? And he said, go upstairs, get upstairs. I went to look back at Berger, and he screamed at me. And I thought it was because he didn't want, and it was because he didn't want me to see Berger like that. Which means a lot to me now that I don't have that image. Anyway, I ran upstairs, and I was frantically looking for Kayli. And I went from the worst moment of my life of seeing Kayli's legs at the top of the stairs to the best moment of my life, seeing her say, breathe, and we were okay.
I can't breathe. Take time. Take whatever time you want. I'm a sister, and I hear you talk about your love for your sister. I have one sister, and I know that love, and I'm the younger of two, but there's so much compassion pouring out of you as you share the most difficult minutes of your life. And I don't know if this was really 6 minutes. I read that this was a 6-minute exchange. It feels like 6 hours of torture and fight and grit.
Yeah.
And a mix of love for your sister, love for your life, compassion for this horrific person, with strategy and determination when that wasn't at all what you were thinking about doing when you were getting ready for bed with your computer on your bed. That's not at all what you planned for the evening. So I applaud you. I have no words to even say how powerful you are. And the fact that you take this story now and bring it to us out of a love, a pouring over of that compassion for all of us, people you don't know, victims you don't know, people who are not victims, and you don't want them to be victims. I can't thank you enough. I just can't.
Well, I think that your actions speak. Your actions of advocacy speak volumes, and they're so appreciated. It's so healing and validating to have people up to bat for victims, and I'm so, so thankful. And I hope that in sharing my story, I really wish, I genuinely, not only did I not think it was going to happen to me that night, I genuinely never thought that would happen to me. And I know it sounds almost cliche when people hear that, of like, oh, that's what everyone says on these TV shows or crime shows or whatever. But it does. And I don't know why or what is preventing it from clicking before it gets to the point where you're actually having to fight. And I think there's a lot of factors, but I share my story, not obviously because it's enjoyable or something that I necessarily like to do, but in hopes to let people know I am your average girl. There's nothing, I mean, obviously I have privilege that a lot of people don't. And I recognize that my privilege has played a role in the platform I have now and things like that. I recognize there's privilege there. But at the same time, I'm just like you. I'm just like those of you listening. And if it happened to me, it can happen to you. And I don't say that to scare you, but I say that to empower you to be proactive, to be prepared and not paranoid, and to take time to invest in yourself and your defense, and to realize that self-defense is so much more than throwing punches or elbowing a man in the groin or gouging someone's eyes out. Self-defense is literally defending everything that makes you you. And you are worth defending. Your dreams are worth defending. Your worth is worth defending. Your future, your relationships, your friendships. It's all worth defending. And that's all those things are what makes up you. And learning how to practice self-defense in a holistic way is really important. And it's something that needs to be practiced. And not even, I mean, I think society makes this big deal of self-defense being a martial art or something that's going to take up a lot of time and has to be a hobby in order to be practiced in some expensive endeavor, when really investing in self-defense can be standing in front of the mirror every single day and saying with confidence, with your shoulders back, and looking at your beautiful self and saying, I am a fighter, and saying it every day repetitively until you believe it. Because until we believe it emotionally and physically, we won't fight physically when and if needed.
Bre, you've launched Fight Like Girls, and we want to push everybody out there to follow you at Fight Like Girls on Instagram. And I think, of course, we hate every second of what you went through. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And we thank you for allowing us to use your story to protect other people moving forward. And what my hope is that we don't just cry with you, but that we learn from you and we say, look, who listening here, me 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, you asked me about 911. Yeah, even if you prank call, you call, you hang up, they're going to show up.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't happen in your case.
Yeah.
You think about law enforcement, which to us, we support law enforcement wholeheartedly, and we thank the role of the officer in your case night and day. There's so much value there. We think about the notion of talking to young girls about being public safety minded. You guys, it's not about being paranoid. We're not saying everybody's going to have this happen to them, but does it hurt to sit in your house and say, okay, if the chances are slim, but if somebody were to break in, what do I do? Because when you talk about the frozenness, a lot of it is like, what on earth? I'm not even registering what's happening. But if you've trained your brain, somebody could break in. Just like there could be a fire. I know that if there's a fire, I've got to exit. The alarm might be scary, but I've heard it a number of times and I know to exit. We don't do the role playing of what if somebody comes into the house. And I tell people, do it, not to scare anybody, but to remove the utter fear of like, what is happening? Yeah. And then I challenge people, and I think you have challenged people to look at the criminal justice system. In your case, this person escaped from a halfway house. You mentioned he had been in prison for 14 years. Mm-hmm. He was in a halfway house that he just walked out of on a Sunday in Utah, saying he was going out to some appointment, which you made the point, the place he said he was going to wasn't even open.
Yeah.
And he didn't come back. Who's watching? That affects all of us. And then you talk about self-defense. Does that, if girls across America, boys across America were to sit down and look at those things, do you feel like we're better at protecting ourselves, or is it one or the other? what are your thoughts about the aftermath and what we should be doing as families, as societies, as young women?
Well, I think part of self-defense is speaking up, is digging, is trying to find answers and a solution of some sort of, for example, when I found out about Berger, so he had been in prison for 14 years for kidnapping and trying to kill someone else, but he had been in prison since he was 18, in and out of prison since he was 18. So the way that he was able to kidnap someone is he broke his wrist on purpose in jail, knowing that he'd have to go and get an x-ray, so they would take off his handcuffs, and then he escaped. And so the fact that they didn't even look into that, so if he used going to the doctor as an excuse again, why isn't that a red flag? Why aren't we, the people who we trust, especially government entities, who I think we just blindly trust that everyone's doing what they should be doing, as they should be. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into like why they're not, and none of which are okay. But learning these things was, yes, it was Berger who tried to kill me, but there's responsibility. There's other negligence that played a role in him trying to kill me that they need to be held accountable for, and just to keep other people safe. And it's not, I think that this whole idea of living in fear, and that fear is painted out to be some terrible, terrible thing. I really want to encourage listeners to change your mindset about fear. Now, you're probably thinking, this girl is whack, but hear me out. Fear is almost a privilege. Fear is hey, heads up, danger's coming. And danger is what we need to be afraid of. Fear is a good thing. Fear is like our first sign that triggers our intuition, that helps us react and helps us prepare. And if we keep ignoring it, if we keep avoiding conversations, if we keep avoiding just hard things to talk about, then we're blatantly like, I don't want a heads up. I actually don't want this warning. Don't help me. I'm good on my own. So then when something does happen, there's no way to react because we don't know what we're feeling. But if you can recognize fear, recognize your intuition, and then act, you are already so much safer. You're making yourself a hard target. Predators want easy targets. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to get hurt. It takes a predator 7 seconds to look at a target and know whether or not they're going to be an easy or hard target. 7 seconds. That's it.
Seven seconds.
Yeah, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's it. Like counting it out is just, it's mind blowing to me. That's how long it takes. And then it takes our brains 0.5 seconds to 4 seconds to realize I'm being attacked. And if you're not practicing self-defense moves, if you're not practicing verbal de-escalation, then you won't react. It's just like if a mosquito lands on us, we're so quick to slap it without even thinking about it. We're so quick to slap it. But if a scary dude approaches us on the subway and says something creepy, we're not shutting it down like we need to be shutting it down.
We're not trained for it. We're not trained for it. And that's what your message is encouraging us to do. And I don't think it's impossible to be trained for it. You talk about this, a mere 20% of girls fight back, which means that 80% of girls will end up being raped or murdered.
Yeah.
When that doesn't have to be the case. One, we have to do better in terms of, you mentioned the governmental agency side. We have to do better at monitoring these people who have made it clear that their intent is to victimize. We need to give them every chance for rehabilitation when they're locked up. I'm not for like throw away the key and let them rot in prison. I'm really not. We need to be investing in them. But we also have to be smart enough to listen to people when they tell us who they are, and to be following their actions, and to have a better handle on this, because we're seeing it here in Houston. We just broke the story. Almost 200 people have escaped from halfway houses right here in our city. We don't know where they are. This is one. Your stories is what the unbelievable consequences of one interface with one of these people, and we just can't have it happen.
No, we can't. And I think that we as community members, we rule the government, right? Like they go off of our votes, they go off of our say and our participation. And that's like before I was never really, I mean, I regret to even admit this, but I wasn't involved in politics. I wasn't involved in who's on the city council or who's voting for justice or investment programs for prisoners. I was not aware of any of that stuff. And I'm not saying everyone needs to go and be like activists and out like protesting different acts, but just being aware of who's in and who's making what call. It's our choice, and we have a lot of power that we need to ignite.
What is your, as we come to an hour now with you, what is your biggest takeaway? Like whether it be myths or just pleas to girls your age at that time. What is your biggest message to those listening?
Oh, well, I have a couple. First and foremost, I just want all girls and women to know they don't have to be polite. They're worth defending, and to fight like hell if they need to fight like girls. The reason I named it Fight Like Girls is because oftentimes when you're going to self-defense and you're training, men are teaching, and they're usually teaching how to fight like men. They like either punches or whatever, and women, those aren't our strong parts of our body. So it's using the strong parts of the female body and hitting the center line of a male. And so that's kind of where the name came from. Another reason we named it that, so it's kind of a random note, but when we were talking to the detective, he said, if only all girls would fight like you girls. And that's when I knew if Kayli wasn't there with me that night, I would have been part of the 80%. And I don't want that for other girls. And I want them to know that they can. If I can, they can too. And also that we don't have to live in fear, but we should live with fear. We should let it empower us. We have to define our fights before they define us. You know, we can take control. We can take our lives back. And even after things like this happen, you can still live a happy, fulfilled life. It's different, yes, but no matter what takes you to your rock bottom, if you choose when you're at your rock bottom to keep fighting and use it as a pivot point, use all of your pain to pave a way for a pivot, I promise it gets better. And just keep fighting. And for college girls specifically, I think it's really important that they are aware of their campus, the safety options they have on campus, the women resource centers. Contact the police on campus and ask them, get to know them, contact and ask them what resources they have for girls specifically, or if they have resources for parking lot safety. Use the buddy system, share your location with your roommates, have a check-in rule. There's a lot of different things. If your landlord, get to know your landlord and contact information for him or her. Get to know if a maintenance person is coming, have them show their ID before getting into the home. There's just a lot of different things you can do. But most importantly, just know that the statistics are even higher for girls on college campuses. 1 in 6 girls is raped or murdered. That is reported, right? Because we know that 80% of rapes aren't even reported. That's a whole other subject. But 1 in 4 girls on campus. So the rates are even higher. And again, don't let that scare you. Let it empower you to change those rates, to flip it. And I guess lastly, what my mission is, my mission's kind of evolving as my healing's evolving and as my survival continues. The torment needs to be placed in the direction of the tormentor. Oftentimes, telling my story or hearing other people's stories when I'm in crowds, which I am guilty of doing before, but I'd hear stories about a girl being raped or something like that, and people would ask, well, what is she wearing? What was she doing? Even today, and it's okay. It's just a lack of awareness, and it's just we have to change the conversation. We have to disrupt the conversation. Self-defense shouldn't be a women's issue. Yeah, it needs to be a male issue. It needs to be at what point are men becoming monsters? And I recognize that there are women who assault and are terrible, but for my platform, this is what I speak on. And I just think that we need to change the discussion. We need to switch the questions to, well, why did he do what he did to her? Why did he come in her window? Whatever it is. So I think disrupting the conversation, being aware, and just knowing that self-defense is more than throwing punches and that you're worth defending.
Bre, your story is so powerful. You are so mighty, for your strength, for your love, for your compassion, for your intelligence, for your sensitivity to all of that is involved in this issue. And for the fact that, you keep saying that your sister is the fighter, but you are certainly a fighter. And I am thankful that you're fighting on every level now. So whether that be legislative, whether that be in the courts, whether that be with your voice, speaking to girls, boys and girls across this country, igniting conversations, it's an outpouring of power in every possible way. And we must stay in touch with you.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not going to let you go, unfortunately.
No.
And we want to encourage people to follow your journey, because in your healing, you continue to touch the lives of so many. Fight Like Girls is where you go to follow Bre, to get information. She shares a wealth of safety information in a way that really speaks to girls, to all. I've been following her and just thankful for all you do. I want to do something else with you coming up. You're really looking at self-defense holistically. I'm going to let you go for now, but I want to come back and actually have you walk us through some of the things that you use, gadgets, ideas, because I think that can be used for others and really important information for other people. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Whatever Crime Stoppers is up to, count me in forever.
I'm not going to forget that, and we're going to do it.
Don't.
Thank you again. Thank you.
It was such a pleasure meeting you and talking with you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thanks for sharing my story.
If you missed anything from the show, check out the show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. This episode was edited and mixed by the team at Real News PR. Our executive producer is Sydney Zeicher. Our advising producer is Katie Myers. Our media and quality assurance director is Tanya Cruz. And finally, our creative design director is Elizabeth Mcchesney. To find out more information about Crime Stoppers of Houston or to get involved with our prevention programming, please visit us at crime-stoppers.org. You can find us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast, and you can find me online at The Runyon Report.